दशम श्रेणी पिलामाने आज आम आलोचना करिबा तमर इंग्लिश बहिर ए ग्रेन एज बिग एज हैंड्स एग विषयटीर क्वेश्चन आंसर। तो पिले देख वन डे दिहाइचे comprehension check. What did the children find in the ravine? Answer. The children found in the ravine a thing shaped like a grain of corn with a groove down the middle which was large as a hen's eggs. Number 2. How did the wise man know that was a grain of corn? Answer. When the grain was laying on a window sill, a hen flew in and pecked at it till she made a hole in it. And then everyone got to know that it was grain of corn. Number 3. What did the king do to collect information about the grain? Answer. The king ordered the learned men to find out when and where such corn had grown. Number 4. Could the learned men find out the answer? What was their suggestions? Answer. No, the learned men thought and searched but could not find answer. They suggest that the king could get the answer from the peasants. Therefore, next number 5. What was the king's question to the old peasant who came first? Answer. The king asked the old peasant from where such grains have grown and had he ever brought or sown such in his fields. Number 6. Was he able to hear and see? What was his answer? Answer. He could hardly see or hear. He answered after the great difficulty that neither he had sown nor reaped such grain in his fields. He also told the king that the grains he saw was the size of the grains were as small as it were the time. Number 7. How did the old peasant's father come to the king? Was he able to see? Answer. The old peasant told the king that he could ask his father about such grain. So the king sent for the old peasant's father. The old peasant's father was able to see. Tapre 2. Number 1. How big was the corn in his father's time? Answer. In his father's time, the size of the corn was as small as it was in his time. Number 2. Read the lines that describe the old man's grandfather. Answer. He entered walking easily and without crutch. His eye was clear, his hearing good, and he spoke distinctly. Number 3. What was the grandfather's reply to the king's question? Answer. The grandfather's reply to the king that in his time the same size of corn would grow. In fact, he also sown and reaped the same king of grain in his time. He lived on that corn. Number 4. Did the people in grandfather's time buy or sell bread? Answer. No, people in grandfather's time did not do the sin of buying and selling the bread. Number 5. Was the land free during his time? Say the lines that suggest. Answer. Yes, the land during the time of grandfather was free. The following lines suggest the idea. My field was God's earth. Wherever I plucked, there was my field. Land was free. It was a thing no man called his own. Labor was the only thing men called their own. Number 6. What were the last 2 questions of the king? Answer. The king asked 2 questions to the grandfather. The first question was why the earth did bear such grain in grandfather's time and has ceased to do so in the present time. And the second question was how even at his age he could able to walk, see and hear probably where his grandson used to crossed and his son uncrossed. Number 7. What reply did the grandfather give? Answer. The grandfather replied that men in the present time have stopped to live by their own labor and are dependent on the labor of others. In his time, they lived according to the God's law and they earned from their efforts and not from others. তারপরে দেয়া হয়েছে ডি রাইটিং Answer the following questions in about 50 words. Number 1. How did the grain of corn reach the king? Answer. One day some children found a thing shaped like a grain of corn with a groove down the middle in a ravine. The grain of corn was as large as a handshake. A traveler who was passing by saw the thing and brought it from the children by giving them a penny. He then took that thing to the town and sold it to the king as a curiosity. This is how the grain of corn reached the king. Number 2. How did the wise man know that it was a grain of corn? Answer. The king wanted to know what that thing was. To know what exactly it was, he called his wise men to find it out. The wise man thought but all in vain. It was one day when the thing was laying on a window sill. A hen flew and picked at it till she made a hole in it. It was then everyone saw and got to know that it was a grain of corn. Number 3. What suggestion did the learned men give to the king to find out when and where such corns had grown? Answer. The king was surprised to know that thing was a grain of corn. He wanted to know when and where such kind of grain had grown. He then ordered the learned men to find out about it. The learned thought over and again and even searched in their book, but they could not find the answer. They suggested the king that it would be better if the king asked the peasants about the grain. Number 4. What were the replies given by the old peasant and his father regarding the corn? Answer. The king wanted to know from old peasant and his father how and where that large corn had grown. Both of them replied saying that they did not sow or reap such kind of corn in their fields. Old peasant's father told the king that his father might know where and how that large corn had grown. Number 5. How were the 3 old men in the story described? Answer. The 3 old men in the story are the 3 generations of the same family. The first old man is a peasant whose posture was bent. His skin was ashen and was toothless. He walked talking crossed in his hands. He could hardly see or hear. তারপরে লিখিব The second old man was the first peasant's father. He could hear well than his son. He walked with having one crutch with him. The third old man was the second old man's father. The first peasant's grandfather, the third old man, did not have any crutches and walked easily. He had clear vision and could hear probably, and he spoke distinctly. Number 6. Briefly describe the lifestyle of the people during grandfather's time. Answer. The people during the grandfather's time were hardworking. They led a simple life without any expectation of anything. They worked hard in the fields and never called it theirs. They never declared themselves as the owners. They lived according to the will of the God. They never wanted something that was of others. They produced their crops and gave it to others too. They worked without any expectation of money in return. The people were so simple that they never bought or sold their bread for the sake of the money. তারপরে Number 7. What comments did the grandfather give on life style of people today? Answer. Grandfather was a wise man and he lived a simple life. He thoughts reflected on his health. Grandfather said that today's people are dependent one another for their crops. Now the people make others work hard in the fields and depend on them for their production. People seem to be less hard working in this. তারপরে activity দেখো দিয়া হয়েছে draw a family tree using the information given in the story. এরে দিয়েছি here are some words and expressions given in the box. Choose the right words, expressions and fill in the following diagram. এটা দেওয়া হয়েছে toothless, on crutch, eyes clear, old and bent, two crutches, without crutches, heard better, spoke distantly, able, still able to see, hearing good. এটা ଦେଖିକି ଲେଖ ଦେଖ ମୁଁ ଲେଖିଦେଇଛି ତମେ ଲେଖିନିଅ ভিডিওটিକୁ ପଜ୍ କର ତାପରେ ଲେଖ ଯେମିତି ସନ୍ ପାଇଁ କିଛି ଲେଖା ହେଇଛି ଏଠି ଦେଖ ଯେମିତି ଟୁଥଲେସ୍, ଓଲ୍ଡ ଆଣ୍ଡ ବେଣ୍ଟ, ଶେଭେଲ୍, ଟୁ କ୍ରଚେସ୍ ଏମିତି ସବୁ ଦେଖିକି ଲେଖିନିଅ ହେଲା। ତାପରେ ଯିବା ବି କୁ। ବିରେ ଦିଆହେଇଛି ଦେଖ ପିଲେ now use the words and expressions in your own sentences to describe the three old men. Then arrange the sentence in order of the story. अच्छा में लिखिबा Once upon a time there was a king who was presented a large grain of crop. He was amazed to see such large crop, for he had never seen such large grain of crop in his entire life. The grain of crop was of corn. He wanted to know where and how such large grain of crop was produced. He ordered his learned man to find about it. The learned man thought and read about it, but they could not come with the answer. The learned man suggested the king to ask peasant if they knew the answer. The king then sent for a peasant. The peasant was old and bent and walked in with two crutches. He had a shepherd and was toothless. He was asked if he knew how and where such large grain was produced. He told the king that he had never saw or reaped such kind of grain. He then told the king that his father might know well about it. Then once again the king sent for the peasant's father. The peasant's father walked in with one crutch. He was able to see. তারপরে লিখিব and hear well. He was also asked the same as his son. The peasant's father replied that he neither saw nor reaped such kind of grain. He then suggested to bring his father, for he might knew the answer. And then once again the king sent for the peasant's father. The third peasant, the grandfather of the first peasant, walked easily without any crutches. He had clear eye, he could hear better and spoke distinctly. Despite being old, he was not bent and was healthy. He then told the king that in his time such large grain could be produced. They believed that there was no particular owner of any field. They worked hard and according to the will of the God. In his time they were not dependent on the other people for their work. He also commented on the modern working of the people and how change in the working of people have made them dependent on the others. The third peasant was a wise man who did not work for money. तो पिले एतिकिरे सरीला पिला माने चैनल को नुआ आसले चैनल को सब्सक्राइब करो, लाइक करो, शेयर करो। थैंक्स फॉर वाचिंग। पुणी देखा न्यू वीडियो रे।